What's going on, world? Welcome to another edition of the Black Mental Health Podcast. It's late. I almost forgot the title of the podcast. I'm your host, Reg. Joined today with me is another very special guest. It's over a year now, man. I met her at a conference where I was speaking at. Shout out to Tierra. She was at the oh my God, Tierra's gonna kill me. Well, I can't remember it.
Loving
Me conference. And so you guys look at the earlier episode of Tierra, and I met her. I met today's guest at that conference, and she blew me away as a mother, as a presenter, the wealth of information. And so we've been connected ever since, and we'll get into it because I'm actually speaking at her conference now, and it's just a coincidence and a synergy of how life works. So I had her today because I wanted to share her story on the platform, as well as so you guys can get some more information about the conference and what it's about, because it's the first virtual one. So now everyone can attend instead of it being physical. You know what I mean? And so I let people introduce themselves so I don't mess anything up. Without further ado, today's guest.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Reggie. I'm Sadija. I'm Sadija Smiley. And I am a mother. I'm a mother of three. I have two beautiful girls on earth and one beautiful baby girl in heaven. My first daughter who passed away. And I'm originally from Philly. I'm living now in the DMV area. I'm in Maryland, about 20 minutes from DC. And yeah, that's me.
So one of the things I was intrigued by when I saw you at the conference, at the Love and Me conference, was just your mission behind your brand, and what, because I never even thought of it being, I don't want to say significant, but that so many people grieve in silence about this particular mission you have. So could you talk more about that? Because I didn't even know it was as developed as I should have known about it. But once it encouraged me, it inspired me. I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about that. So talk more about your mission and how you got started.
Sure. So I started an organization. It's called SAILS, Stillborn and Infant Loss Support. And our slogan or tagline, if you will, is born into silence. And the organization was actually birthed. I founded the organization after I lost my daughter. I was 36 weeks pregnant when my first daughter, Aviana Celine, I learned that she didn't have a heartbeat. And medically determined she was stillborn. And I like to call it born sleeping because she looked very peaceful. Her eyes were closed when she was born. She just really looked like she was sleeping. And it's a very traumatic and painful experience to carry a baby, period, and lose it. And then if you add having to carry a baby for 9 months and go through labor and delivery and the child not be alive is a lot. And so through my experience and my pain, after a while, once I wrapped my head around what happened and what it all meant, I started just doing a little bit of research just to see, because I didn't feel supported by my family. I didn't feel supported by the doctors. I was in West Virginia. If anybody knows anything about West Virginia, there's not a lot of people, a lot of Black and brown people that look like you and I. And so when you add the racial tension differences on top of a loss, there wasn't a lot of support either. And so I just started doing some research to find out how often this happens. And through that, I learned not only does it happen, well, 1 in 4 pregnancies end in some sort of loss. And that loss can be either a miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy, which is a tubal pregnancy. It could be a stillbirth, which is what I had. And I learned that 2 of my sisters, my only 2 sisters, each had a stillborn. My one sister had stillborn twins, and my other sister had a stillborn son. But I didn't know that until it happened. Not even, I'm lying. It wasn't until it happened to me. I didn't find out about my oldest sister until probably within the last year or 2 after I founded the organization. She then told me about my nephew, her son. And I just learned how frequent it happens, but nobody talks about it. And it's a lot of stigma around it, especially for women. I know that Men and women grieve differently, and they interpret this process differently. But for women, it it's mental, it's physical. It makes you consider, yourself as a woman. Am I woman enough if I can't bring forth life? Did I do something wrong? Was it something I did as to why the baby didn't live? And then, I mean, the other thing with that process is you go through a full labor. So your body doesn't even connect with what happened. So your body is still prepared to nurture a baby. So you have milk, your breast filled with milk, and so you still can nurse this baby, but you don't have a baby. So your body is still doing this pregnancy, this postpartum thing, and there's no baby. And it's just really, it's a very painful, and I take a lot of deep breaths because as I talk about it, I get emotional, which is to be expected. But I really try to hold it together a little bit. But I think one of the most important things for me as to why I started the organization is because when it happened, when my daughter died, essentially, because that's what happened. When my daughter died, I felt alone, and I know my family felt alone because they didn't know how to support me. They wanted to, but didn't know how. So I've just made it my life's mission to let other families know when the baby passes that they're not alone, and to educate and encourage those that are connected to that baby so they can support the parents because they want to, they just really don't know how.
Yeah, and I salute to you, and I want to share the screen because I pulled up your website, and this is where everybody can register for the first virtual conference, for the first virtual Survivor Summit, because there you had it before, you had talk about the previous experiences and how it translating right now to the virtual world, and you see your boy up there, but talk about how that transition has been, and my merch ain't coming in the mail yet too.
Oh, it should be coming. It should be there by hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm gonna check. But initially in person, so we did our first Survivor Summit in May of last year, and I was surprised. We had about 60 people in attendance. It was here in Maryland and Anne Arundel County. We had it at the library and in their little community space, which we instantly knew we couldn't do that anymore because so many people had came, but I didn't expect that many people to come. But the purpose of the summit is to bring together again the person or people that have been impacted by the loss and the community so that they can learn different ways on how to support the families. And so we have speakers. I always have a clinician. There's a psychologist or a therapist there because of the emotions and the things that come up for people. I make sure that there's somebody there on site to help them process because it's a very heavy topic. I try to have a DJ with some music, or we may have someone sing just to kind of lighten the mood a little. But the whole purpose of the summit is to bring everybody together to honor the babies, because again, for me, I don't want my daughter to ever be forgotten, and I know that other parents don't want their children to be forgotten. So we have a remembrance wall, we have a moment of silence, and we read the babies' names, and we share stories and just different ways to cope with. And it's really about validating the experience and the feelings that people are having. So that's in person. Now this year, because of COVID and all of these things, we shifted to a virtual platform, a virtual experience, which I'm super excited about because last year I had gotten inboxes and emails because people wanted me to bring it to their city. And I'm like, that's great. I'm excited. I'm not ready to do that yet. Maybe in our 5-year plan. So now I was happy to be able to go back to those emails and those inboxes and say, hey, I couldn't bring it to you, but now you can join us online. So I'm super excited about the amount of people that it will reach instead versus the in-person. So a little, it's different because of the topic. We like to be in person so you can offer that human connection, but I'm still excited that it's going to be virtual so we can reach more people.
So I know, and again, the tickets are on the website. I'll put the link to the information in the comments and the sections and everything, or the editor will do it. But so I remember from the conference, you were saying that. So it's a two-part question. What does support look like? Because if people don't know how to support, so what does support look like from families and friends? And what are some things that you have to avoid when you're trying to support? Because I know you said it was language that you have to avoid when you're trying to support because it can come off offensive. So
Yeah.
what does support look like, and what's the language we should be using when we're trying to support?
Those are really, really good questions. So in terms of the support, the biggest thing that you can do is be available. Being present, your presence is the most important thing, because sometimes people, and I'm saying us because even still to this day, I find that people are uncomfortable about the topic and they avoid me or they avoid the conversation. So even if you don't know what to say, being around is way better than avoiding the person. So be available. And say it, I'm not sure what you want from me right now. I'm not sure what I can do, but I'm here if you need me. So being available is number one. Number two is being patient. What I've learned and continue to learn even in my mentoring now with families, I have family members who will call me and say, Sadija, she's still angry. Sadija, she's still this. And I'm like, it takes her time, not time. It's in her timing. Well, that's for you. So you have to be patient. Everybody goes through the process differently. And so don't rush anybody in their grief, and don't rush them in their process. So number one, be available. Number two, be patient and don't rush them. And number three, be prepared. And the way that you can be prepared, it's an array of emotions. They may be, we, myself included, may be smiling one day and can't get out the bed the next day. So just be prepared for the array of emotions that will come. And some of the things that I would tell everyone to avoid saying, many of the cliches, one is everything happens for a reason. While that's true, it does. When your child dies, you don't care what the reason is and you don't want to hear that. So that's number one. Number two, God needed another angel in heaven. That might be true too. Maybe, I don't know, it's not enough space. They need more I don't know. But if you feel that way, then let him take your baby. So don't tell me that my baby is not here because he needs another angel, but your baby is still here. Why he didn't take yours? So be really careful with the cliche things because they are very offensive. So when you don't know what to say, don't say anything at all. You can say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're feeling that way. I think the biggest thing that many people can do to support is acknowledge that I haven't experienced it if you haven't, and I really don't know what to say, but I want to be here for you. Instead of trying to reach for things and saying something that may trigger that person or make it seem like, you don't care. Oh, it'll be okay with time. Time heals all wounds. No, time does nothing but pass. Time doesn't heal anything. It just passes. Oh, get up, get up. You need to get up out that bed. If they want to lay in the bed that day, that's fine. Again, be patient, be prepared, and be available.
No, that's true. And most of you, you're getting some of the sneak tips and sneak peek into the Sales Virtual Survivor Summit, the We Are One Summit this weekend coming up. By the time you guys hear it, it'll be this weekend coming up. So my next question is, I just did a podcast a few episodes ago with my spouse, and this is what I will be speaking on at the conference. And I didn't get a chance to go into too much detail because I wanted to save it for your event. This is the first time I actually speaking on it. But what does the support look like in a heterosexual? Because I'm biased at this point. I'm just looking at the man, woman. That's the only one that perspective I can see. But as a man, when you're in that situation, what does support look like from a male?
So I'm gonna touch that twice. I'm gonna do from a male's perspective and for the male, because I think oftentimes as women, period, whenever a woman's pregnant, oh, put our feet up. We cater, and I'm saying we, again, myself, cater to the woman, and we don't always include the man. So for the male, I think men have this, and you're gonna have to help me because I'm getting not in my feelings, but I might be a little stereotypical, but men have this not a facade, but they have to be strong, and this I can't cry and I can't break
An
down.
emotional bravado.
Yes, thank you. And so I think the support from him is it's okay, especially with your partner, it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable, right? Because one, I think in order for you two to support each other, you each have to see that you're both impacted by this. for women, we like, oh, he don't cry, he don't even talk about the baby. It's like he don't even care. But that's because he's not showing her that he cares. So I think men can be more comfortable letting their wife, their girlfriend, their the child's mother know that it's impacting them and how they feel. Be open with how you're feeling about it. And if you need a minute to say that, again, it's really about communication. It's hard in those moments, but really communicate. Listen, babe, I need 5 minutes. I need 10 minutes. I just, need some time. And then on the flip side, for the woman to be able to let him know that I know you were expecting this baby too. And, I know you're hurting. I know it's bothering you. It's okay. Encourage him to be open and vulnerable with you instead of, it's hard in the moment, but instead of making it all about us being the woman, make it about us being the parents. It's you and him because it's both of you guys' baby. So I think creating that safe space between the couple, that it's okay to be vulnerable and really talk about it. And then if you can't, because it's not always, in all honesty, those couples don't always have that kind of synergy. And so you may not be able to talk to the other person. Write it down, find somebody that, you can talk to about it and be able to work through those things. But communication is going to be key.
Nah, and it's true because I still, mind you, I'm still fighting against that. That I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the episode, but I'm still,
Mm-hmm.
battling and dealing with that because I know I fucked up basically in that moment,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's nothing. I won't say it's nothing, but it's going to be its own timing for it to be a healing process of me messing up in that moment because um I guess fortunately for both of us, we don't have to deal with that type of pain often. But
Mm-hmm.
so I don't have no chance to improve on it again until it comes
Right.
up. The opportunity, God forbid, the opportunity presents
Right.
itself again. And so it's almost like you gotta just wait it out and just be there and be supported. That's why I guess I was asking a subtle question for myself because it's like I don't even know how to fix it at that point.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really about the communication because, like, I wouldn't, for you and for anybody else that may be listening or watching, I wouldn't wait for the opportunity to happen again. I think it's safe to say, hey, I realized that when we lost the baby or whatever the circumstance was, I may not have handled that the best way, but this is how I was feeling. This is why I was scared, or, whatever those feelings that came up for you. And when you're ready, we can talk about it again. Because it's like you said, it's not going anywhere, and it still does need to be in your timing, because again, you both are going to heal and you guys are going on this journey together, but still at different paces sometimes. But I think it's important to acknowledge, because for women and men, it's all really about validation. You want somebody to know and acknowledge that you were hurting. When people say I'm sorry, when people apologize, it feels different. It's that validation, acknowledging that, okay, I hurt you. And then once you apologize, a lot of times the walls will drop. Whew, okay, fine. He or she realizes that they messed up. Now, how can we make this better moving forward? But it's just going to be those conversations. They're uncomfortable, but maybe there's 5 minutes a week that you decide that, okay, we're going to talk a little bit about this, and then that's it, and then we'll hit it again next week.
No, and that's great advice because I think that's some of the things that we are doing, and it's like trust is the easiest thing to lose and the hardest thing to build back up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So transitioning, how do you or how do you have this conversation with siblings? Like they are experiencing that same loss if they lose a brother and or a sister and they was getting all excited and then but they may be too young to process what's happening and what's going on. How do you explain that to children, like breaking it down to their level?
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think really matters is their age, right? Because if the kids are too young, they do know that mommy was pregnant, and then you go to the hospital. For most times you go to the hospital, so they're expecting you to bring a baby home. So it really depends on their age. For younger children, there actually is a couple of books out. I was researching this. There's a couple of books that help people talk with younger kids. It's how comfortable you feel and what you believe, right? So for me, my daughter is my angel. So I believe that she's in heaven. And so I learned the hard way with both of my kids, though. My oldest daughter, when I told her about her sister, I think I told her too early and in ways that she didn't really understand. Or I didn't understand that she would still grieve, because she broke down crying. And she went to school and she told her teacher that her sister died. And they didn't know the backstory. So I think you really have to look at the timing and the age. So for the younger kids, if you believe that, the baby's in the sky, you really have to figure out what works best for you in their age. Because if they're small children really don't, they still grieve, but they really don't understand. And they'll keep asking you. So you have to be patient too with the kids, because they're going to keep asking you, well, where's the baby? And you're already dealing with what you're dealing with, and you have to keep telling them again, well, the baby is not coming home. Well, why? Why not? What happened? So you just have to be patient with explaining that. But it's based on your beliefs and the age of that child, whether you tell them that and how comfortable you are. Some people just are, even now I struggle to say my daughter died. I mean, because that essentially is what happened, but it's still hard to say it like that. But some people are more forthcoming. So it's really based on how comfortable you feel.
No, I believe it, and you actually transitioned it right and point into one of my questions. Because I know when we're recording, it's pretty late. But what are some? So the question that I originally had was: is there a difference in loss when it comes to different races and cultures, and how we're impacted by it? But I also was going to ask, what are some like random, off the top of mind stats or facts that you have that relates to your mission?
So I can tell you, one thing is when the differences in terms of stats are Black women are losing babies 3 times as fast as the amount of our counterparts. I wish I had my notes in front of me for Maryland, because I just looked at the data that just came out for 2018. They just published it. But Black women are losing babies. So they do the count by every 1,000 live births. And so don't quote me, but I am going to send it to you when we finish. In my area in the state of Maryland, for the top highest counties, Baltimore City, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and there's 2 other ones, Baltimore County and one other county. The rate per 1,000 births for white women is like 4.9. Black women is like 15.7. And the national rate, or the state rate, is like 15. So it's 5.9. I'm sorry, it's 5.9. So our babies are dying 3 times the state rate. And then white women's babies are dying 4.9. So a little less than the state average when it comes to stats. And I think it goes back to, as we're looking at it, and I don't want to get too deep, but we know our men are dying at the hands of the police. Our women and our children are dying at the hands of doctors. And that's really what it boils down to, where we're not taken seriously. There's this perceived thing, and I believe that they're also trained in medical school that Black people can handle more pain. Their pain tolerance is higher. So as it relates to race, I'm not sure about Hispanics, but I can definitely tell you the ratio between Black and white. And then the first question you asked me was the types of loss.
No, like as it relates to so random facts, and then as it relates to like Black, you answered it already.
Okay.
Different races and religions. Is it like any key things that stand out to you?
Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is, again, not the doctors, not looks. I even think about with my daughter, right? I didn't know until recently. I think I learned it another webinar, something I was on. I learned that thyroid disease, hypothyroid, can cause a stillbirth. I was taking medicine to manage my thyroid levels. It's called Synthroid. I didn't know, they didn't tell me that. I don't even know if the reason that she passed the autopsy, there were no results. They could never give us a cause of death. However, that could have contributed to it, but they didn't tell me that. I was being managed for a thyroid disease, but I didn't know that could cause me to lose my baby. So I think, having that kind of information is key, and trusting yourself. Like, you really have to trust your instincts.
Nah, I believe it. Listen, I'm on the big support Black women wave right now, and they're learning different ways that we can support. So, any stats and information, I just try to use my platforms and gather as much information as possible, because I think it's necessary to put out there. There's a narrative on both ends for Black women, Black men, Black families. And if the people that are in those narratives aren't speaking or don't have a platform to speak, then you don't get that narrative changed.
Right.
My next question, I actually only have a few more. Religion. How, without getting into too many different religions, how do you understand the fact of, like, how people be like, well, why would God do something like this?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
what role does the religion or God play into sudden infant loss, or stillborn loss, or however you see fit to answer it?
I would definitely say your faith is challenged, because it's I believe in God, and I know there's a higher power, and so that's like supernatural, right? That's your spiritual, but logically it's hard to comprehend. And many people will say, why did God take my baby? Why did God kill my, why did, and it wasn't him. You know what I mean? My personal belief is not that God says, you know what, she don't need this baby. He don't need this, it's there's still environmental things at work. There's still other people at work, and it's other forces and things happening. But I think one thing that I would like to say when it comes to religion and faith is that the church needs to do a better job at supporting families as they go through this. And the reason I say that is, again, those cliches, right? Oh, just pray about it. First of all, what makes you think I didn't? That's number one. Number two, what else are we going to do? We can pray, but if you're depressed, if you're, having these thoughts, you have to have some action. Prayer helps, but it's not the end all be all. So I think the church needs to do a better job at supporting with practical things. They go together. They're spiritual, but there also has to be some practical things that you can do. And I would also, the last thing I would say is, getting mad at God is not wrong, because I was pissed with God, because again, I thought, and I looked at it, he took my baby. I wasn't my ex-husband, ex now, but during the time we were boyfriend and girlfriend, so we were having a baby out of wedlock. So it was like, are we being punished because we having sex before marriage? So yeah, I would encourage the church to be more open, and encourage anybody else who has a faith or a belief in God to know that it's okay to be mad with him during those times.
No, and I definitely understand that perspective, and I would think how we something that relates to all of this is that there's a stigma in the church that also relates to the stigma around sudden loss, and that goes to that. What do you think what it takes to erase that stigma? Especially with, like, me coming from the mental health space of, like, erasing stigma around mental health. How will we erase the stigma when it comes to that?
Talking about it. I think the first thing, like with anything else, is awareness and conversation. Letting people know it's okay to talk about it. I think when we have, these prayers and these altar calls, and we're praying for families, we're praying for marriages, we need to be praying for people who are grieving, praying for those who've lost their babies, acknowledge it and speak it so that people feel comfortable coming forth. Because if we're not talking about it, we don't want to be the ones that bring it up, because now I'm different, right? But if we're talking about all of these things, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about physical health, we're talking about grief and loss, and normalizing it, because we're all going to lose somebody. It's just how life goes. Normalizing it and having a conversation to make people more comfortable coming forward, because people aren't coming forward and talking about it because it's weird, and it's no one's else is talking about it. Only people talking about it is those that are impacted by it, and they're talking about it amongst each other. So I think anybody who hasn't experienced it, or may not be as familiar, to start the conversation to create that space so that people feel comfortable.
And it goes transition right into my next question of, how does grief and loss impact your mental health?
It's huge, and I think that when it comes to grief and loss, and I'm speaking not only for the loss of a baby, because we lose relationships, we lose jobs, we lose money, we lose businesses, you know, we lose dreams. It definitely impacts your mental health because it alters how you see things. And so one of the things that I would encourage people, anybody that has experienced a loss, is to really, one, not blame yourself, because I think we blame ourselves for everything anyway. So, you know, when you're experiencing that, and to have again, the conversation and really talking about it, because of a loss, there's several things that can be triggered. You can, you know, go through a depression. You can go through anxiety. You will. It can be also a PTSD experience. Like, I have a very low, mild level of post-traumatic stress disorder from that experience. It was a very traumatic experience. So I think it impacts your mental health in those ways. And because it does, it's important to seek out support. Even if in the beginning you don't realize, or you think you don't want to see a therapist or a mental health professional, I think everybody that experienced a loss at least should have a session or two to process through it, to see how it's impacted them. And then they can kind of go from there.
No, I agree totally because again, you helped me unpack something that I didn't even know was like built in, and it was like, you know what, I didn't even think of. And then once we had that conversation, I brought it home to my relationship. I'm like, damn, I didn't even think about how she was impacted by it and how she was holding it against me, and that could have came up at any time because we never discussed it. It was just a situation that happened that we both just moved past and tucked away and buried it. So my final question would be that exact scenario of, say there's a couple who find out that they're having a miscarriage, or you know, they're in a situation where they're having a miscarriage, or they're in a situation where they're having a stillborn. What do you do as the supportive person in that relationship, and what do you do, like, what are some of the first steps as a support person, and what are some of the first steps for the person who's experiencing it? Like, what suggestions do you have?
I would say my first thing would be both of them are experiencing. I know what you mean. You mean physically, but I would first acknowledge that they both are experiencing, you know, this loss. And I think for the woman, again, because I think we can be kind of hard on our men, because I even remember when our daughter died, I felt like he didn't care, but it was because we didn't talk. He was like, well, you don't know what I did. And I went and I cried and I lit a candle, but you didn't tell me. So as far as I'm concerned, you didn't do, you know, so I think the communication is really key. And sometimes as the woman, we have to ask our man, you have to ask him, how do you feel? Because if you don't ask, he may not tell you. You may ask and he still might not tell you. But if you don't ask, he may not even think you want to hear it, because we're so conditioned and so trained to cater to the woman who's, like you said, who's experiencing this, right? So we're trained to cater to her. And so as your man is catering to you, he's trying to make sure you're okay. And what I've seen is men will try to get your mind off of it, and they just really want to help. They really want to help. And they're like, well, why don't you call? You want to watch TV? You want to do this? And she's like, no, I want my baby, you know. And so I think it's just a miscommunication. Men are programmed and trained to try to get through, over, you know, and they're like, come on, we gotta get to the next. Don't get stuck on this. Come on. And so I think understanding that between men and women, and the woman really being okay to say to him, how do you feel? Give a few minutes, 2 minutes or so, to let it be about him for a little bit, because everybody's going to ask him, well, how's your wife? How's your girlfriend? No one's asking him how he is. So I think being the one to ask him how he's doing, again, creating that space. So if he wants to talk and when he's ready, he will.
Listen, that's all I got. I'll say in our final conversation or last remarks, tell people why they should tune in or buy some tickets for the summit. Because for one, I'm gonna be here. So if you're listening to this, I'm gonna be there. You can get some more information of what I've been sidestepping the story. I heard a little bit of when my fiance was on, but you'll get the full one. So you'll get that. But we got the founder, the planner, the person that brought this dream to reality right now. Tell them why the people should go get some tickets.
You should buy your tickets and join us for our first virtual experience. One, for education for yourself. You don't have to have experienced it to join the summit. Two, to be able to support and help someone else, because everybody knows somebody. You may not even know that you know somebody until you say, oh, I saw this flyer. Or, oh, I've been. And you say, well, so-and-so had a miscarriage. Or so I remember so-and-so. So I think having the knowledge, even if you haven't experienced it, being able to hear Reggie, because as you heard, he's alluded to, there's a story that he has that actually lines up with the theme, and just to come out and have a good time. I think it's really about support. The theme is We Are One, and initially that theme was We Are One coming together in this building physically. And now with everything that's going on, I think it's more important that we come together and show that we are one to support everybody that has experiences and those who are trying to support others. So come on and join, log in, come see Reggie speak. There'll be a DJ, there'll be raffles and giveaways. And lastly, as a viewer or listener of Reggie's show, you'll get 15% off. The code when you go onto the link to purchase your ticket will be Reggie 15. REGGIE 15. So all of your viewers and listeners can register up until the day before the summit and receive 15% off.
Hey, y'all hear it? Y'all heard it first. Y'all get a discount on it. I say go because not only the fact of it's an amazing theme, it's an amazing event, it's an amazing mission, but a lot of people are dealing with loss and grief this year just off of COVID, jobs, opportunities. Like, you're dealing with a lot in this year. And so I think for that alone, from us being in something that like totally wiped a lot of people out in many different aspects, that's alone the reason to go. And the title of my talk is Love Still Living Losses. And that we'll go more into that when you guys see it. And so I would say get your tickets. I only stand by stuff that I really support and are great missions. And on that note, follow Sadija. Her link to the conference and the summit will be in the description. Y'all see me there, and remember that this platform has never been about a replacement to therapy. It's an alternative place where people share therapeutic stories. Thank you for listening.